Hey guys, we're going to just talk about some different types of square root problems besides the simplifying the following square root. But basically, just a quick review. In order to simplify a radical, we factor the number under the square root. We're going to look for the largest perfect square that can be pulled out of that radical. So if we took a number like the square root of 200, right? If I think about my perfect squares, I could rewrite this as the square root of 100 times 2. 100 is the largest perfect square that divides 200, and so we could rewrite this as 100 times the square root of 2. And we know that the square root of 10 of 100 is 10, and so we can simplify this to 10 square root 2. All right, so if we look at the variable expressions up here, the square root of a times b squared, we can rewrite that as really the square root of a times the square root of b squared, and then we could write that as the square root of a times the square root of b times b. And remember that the square root kind of cancels out the squaring of a number, and so here we'll get b times the square root of a. And so the following problems that we're going to do are going to rely on knowing that we could rewrite one square root as the product of two square roots. Okay, so let's look at our first example here. We have an expression that's shown below, 3 times the square root of 39x, and we're looking for what value of x makes the expression equivalent to 15 times the square root of 39x. And so basically we have an equation here. We have 3 times the square root of 39x equals 15 times the square root of 39. And so we're going to rewrite the square root as 3 times the square root of 39 times the square root of x, and that's going to equal 15 times the square root of 39. And so if we compare the two sides, I have a square root of 39 here and a square root of 39 here. These will cancel each other out. Okay, because we just have multiplication here, so we can divide both sides by the square root of 39. I have a 3 on this side, and now we're stuck with a 15 here, so I'm going to divide by 3. And so we have the square root of x equals 5. So we need to think of a number that when we take the square root of it, we get 5. This does not say x equals 5. It says the square root of x is equal to 5. So to undo that, we're going to square both sides. So x equals 25. That will give us our answer that will allow us to simplify 3 times the square root of 39x will become 15 times the square root of 39. So in the next slide, there's another example, just like this. Pause the video here. Move this over. Pause the video here and try it. See if you can figure out what value of x will allow 8 times the square root of 21x to equal 56 times the square root of 21. Pause it, try it, and then I'm going to start working this problem out right now. All right, so we have 8 square root of 21x equals 56 square root of 21. So again, I'm going to rewrite my left-hand side here as 8 square root of 21 square root of x, and that's going to equal 56 square root of 21. Notice again, the only difference is the x comes out, and so this factor of x is what gets multiplied by 8 to get 56. So my square root of 21 is going to cancel. I'm going to divide both sides by 8. And so we're going to get the square root of x is equal to 7. And so again, I'm going to think of a number that when I take the square root, I get 7. And an easy way to do that is just to square both sides, right? This will get rid of the square root, and so x equals 49. All right, and so this is how we can find what value of x will make an equivalent expression. In our next example, we have an expression square root of 77x, and we're going to look for which value in our multiple choice here will allow that to be simplified. And so remember, when we simplify an expression, it's going to mean that we're going to have a statement like b times the square root of a. That's simplified. And so we're going to look at the square root of 77x, and what we're going to do is we're going to factor 77. I know 77 is the same thing as 7 times 11 times x. Now, in order to simplify, I need my x to contain a factor of 7 or 11 in it. That will give me a copy of a 7 or 11 that we can then take out of the square root. So if I look at my choices, 15 is the same thing as 5 times 3. 21 is the same thing as 7 times 3. 39 is the same as 13 times 3. And 51 is the same thing as 17 times 3. So if I look at my choices here, I need to look for one of my numbers here that either has a 7 or a 11 as a factor. And so the only one that has that is B. So we could plug in 21, and our answer could then be simplified to, let's see, we would have the square root of 7 times 11 times 7 times 3. We have a pair of 7s that we would take out, and we would have 11 times 3, which is 33 in the inside the radical. So there's going to be another example on the next slide. Pause the video. See if you can figure out what would be my x value from these choices that would allow us to simplify it. Pause it, try it, and then my answer will be coming shortly. All right, so hopefully you tried it. So square root of 185x, I'm going to factor that. I know that's going to be 5, since it ends in a 5, times 185 divided by 5 is 37 times x. So again, we're going to look for an x that has a factor of 5 or 37. That gives me my second copy of a number that we could take out of the square root. Well, looking at my numbers, the easiest one to look at is 55. This is the same as 5 times 11. There's my factor of 5, and so our answer is D. Right? So these are other types of problems that you could get with square roots when it's not just simplify the square root.